You ever assembled IKEA furniture and you get maybe halfway through the assembly and you realize that you made a mistake and you have to undo it and kind of go back like 8 steps because the end thing is not going to turn out the way that you wanted it to? You can make mistakes all the time doing anything, and buying a home in Toronto is no different. So in this video, what I want to cover is 8 common mistakes that I see home buyers making, and I'm going to tell you what they are and how to avoid them so that you don't lead to regrets, which is a whole other video that I'm going to do after this one as well. So the first mistake that I see, and maybe you'll say that this sounds a little self-serving or whatever, but I do see it happen a lot, and it does end up very poorly for a lot of people, making a whole bunch of lowball offers, especially early in your search. What I've seen up happening is, people are really looking for a deal. And do deals happen in the Toronto market? Yes. Are they easy to find? Are they common? No, they're really not. The types of homes that you typically get deals on are either homes of like very poor quality or undesirable in some way, shape, or form, or it's something that you would never be able to identify unless you were kind of very directly involved with the home, and because it's due to seller motivations, something like that. What I've seen happen is buyers just really want to get a deal, and what I hear sometimes very frequently is, let's just try. Then what ends up happening is their search gets extended, gets dragged out because they keep trying offers on places and it's just not working out, and then those places are selling for more than what they offered on, and it just kind of drags the whole thing out. That causes eventually them to make poor decisions after becoming fatigued basically with their search. They finally find the place that they really love because they love it, probably other people do as well, and then they end up getting into a bit of competition, and they end up probably paying more than they were hoping for because they're just tired and they just needed to end. The other thing that can happen depending on how long the search gets dragged out for is that prices could rise during their search, and then that puts them in a worse position than when they started. So that's the first mistake that I see happening, and that leads me to this next mistake: ensuring that people are paying the right price for the home. Obviously there's some overlap with making lowball offers and that kind of stuff, but I've heard people feel like, not with me, thankfully, read it online, Reddit, talk to people who are maybe on their second purchase or something like that, and a mistake that they feel that they made was overpaying. One thing that I think you should avoid is going into an offer blind and going into it without some kind of justification. So making sure that you are bidding on a property with knowledge of what other nearby very similar properties have sold for. Get comparables from your realtor to ensure that what you are putting on paper and what you're offering for a home is justifiable. It's important probably for yourself and your kind of, your mental health, your kind of well-being, as well as for appraisals for homes. So that's going to be a part of your financing process, whether you have a financing condition in your offer or not. So make sure that you get comps, make sure that you can justify what you're paying for a home. The third mistake that I want to identify is buyers not having a great sense of all the money that's needed for a purchase. Land transfer tax is a big one that sometimes gets overlooked. Toronto is, as of right now, the only municipality in the country that has its own land transfer tax. There also is the Ontario provincial land transfer tax. So if you're buying $1 million home and you don't have any first-time buyer rebates, you're looking at roughly $32,000 in land transfer tax, and that is something that is due in lump sum. You can't add it to your mortgage. You can't pay it in installments or anything like that. That's a chunk of money that's due at the time of purchase. On top of that, you have your closing costs, which compared to the land transfer tax are relatively insignificant. So, working with a lawyer and getting title insurance and all that kind of stuff is going to be like, $2,000 to $2,500 depending on your purchase price. You also want to factor in whether there's some kind of immediate repairs, if there's going to be new furniture to buy. If you're moving from like a 1-bedroom condo to a 3-bedroom house, you're going to need new bedroom furniture. You're probably going to need a bigger couch, maybe buy a dining table that you weren't able to fit in your condo, like those kinds of things. So there's a fair amount of money that kind of goes into a purchase, and I would say people are very focused on down payment and ultimately what's the monthly mortgage payment coming from the whole purchase, and are ignoring a lot of other things that would put on some financial strain. The next mistake is buyers not doing their homework. Don't get me wrong, they absolutely should be able to rely on their real estate agent for helping them with a whole bunch of stuff, especially kind of location-specific research, traffic patterns and school zones and nearby amenities and proximity to transit or proximity to things that are important to their clients, those kinds of things. But ultimately, I very firmly believe that it is the responsibility of the buyer or my client to ensure that the location that they're buying in fits their needs, their lifestyle, everything that kind of goes into where they're going to be living. That is very difficult to do or to achieve by just going and seeing a house one time. You should be very early in your search, visiting neighborhoods, spending a Saturday, going to grab coffee nearby, maybe taking the subway kind of to and from where you're living to the house that you're going to take a look at eventually, but just spending way more time making sure that the neighborhood is the right fit for you, because at the end of the day, you're the person who's going to be living there and you want to make sure that it fits your needs. Another big mistake I see people doing is trying to time the market, either on a short-term basis or a long-term basis. I've spoken with lots of people in the past who were waiting for the crash that never really came. Some people who were waiting for a crash probably still haven't acted during I don't know if I'd call it a condo crash, but sure, certainly the very large pullback in condo prices that we've seen over the past couple of years. I bet you the people who are waiting for a crash still haven't acted because it's not enough of a pullback or enough of a decline in prices. Even throughout a year, sometimes there are soft spots in purchasing times. So summer and winter could potentially be good times to buy because, we see kind of a decrease in average or median prices in both of those times. There's reasons for that, but certainly they're not ideal times to sell. So there might be a bit of a deal to be had, but there also is less listings, less choice available at those times of year as well. It's not automatically optimal to only be looking in the summer and the winter when you think prices are going to be a little bit softer. Buy when it's right for you, buy when your circumstances make sense for you to be looking and purchasing, not necessarily trying to time something as far as the market is concerned. Another big mistake I see people making is relying on their bank's, what I'll call guesstimate of their buying power. So they'll make an appointment with a mortgage advisor at their bank. That advisor will essentially just verbally ask them what their salaries are, and that's the extent of the qualifications, and then they'll be given a range for purchasing. That is not enough, in my opinion, to start your serious search. If you're just using it as a gauge and using it to kind of identify areas where you think you can afford, fine, no problem. But if you're looking at making an offer on places, or you think you're getting close to making offers on places, you should have a full mortgage approval. That's why I'm a big fan of working with mortgage brokers. They put you through the ringer right at the start. They want to know all kinds of information about you. You do a full application so that when they give you a number, you can really solidly rely on that number. Just verbally telling somebody what you make and then being given a purchase range is not enough, in my opinion. This is the second last one that I want to identify, second last mistake, and it is specifically for people who think that condo maintenance fees are a waste of money. I hear it all the time. The thing that people really forget is that if you buy a house, it absolutely comes with maintenance fees. They're just not mandated and a forced payment every single month. But if you buy a home and you are not saving money for eventually a new roof, a new furnace, a new hot water tank, a new air conditioner, new windows, upgrading the kitchen, that you bought a house and the kitchen isn't terrible, but you're eventually going to update it in time. Anything unforeseen, you get a leak in your basement, or you get a leak in your roof, or whatever the case is. If you're not saving money for those kinds of things, then you are going to get hit with some pretty big surprise expenses, and it's going to be a really big financial strain. At least with condos, your burden of maintenance is lower. You as an individual are not responsible for, the roof, the parking garage, and, the landscaping on the outside, all that kind of stuff. You do pay that monthly fee, but with the exception of something catastrophic happening into the building and there being, a special assessment or a need to greatly increase the maintenance fees, that maintenance fee payment that you make every month takes care of a lot of the things that you solely would be responsible for if you own a home. So I wouldn't automatically say maintenance fees for condos are a waste of money, and therefore I think condos should be looked at if that's all that you can afford. This last mistake that I'm going to identify, I saved it last because, again, I don't want it to come across as self-serving. It will sound this way, but it absolutely is something that I have had people, I literally got a phone call today from somebody who's like, I'm working with somebody and they are the wrong realtor, and is it possible that we could work together, and etc. Oftentimes people get a referral. It's often from a close family member or a parent who almost insist on working with somebody, and that's totally fine. Meet with that person, interview them, etc., but just meet with one or two other people as well to make sure that the person that you're working with is the best fit for you, and not just the person that is like an automatic mom or dad said that we should work with this person and therefore we're working with this person. It absolutely could be the case that that recommendation from dad or whatever is a great fit for you. Fantastic. That's great. but you want to make sure that it's the right fit for you and that you're not being, for lack of a better word, forced to work with somebody that just ends up being a really bad fit for you. So these mistakes are all avoidable if you know what to look for. If you want help building a buyer strategy that fits your budget, your lifestyle, your timeline, you can book a no pressure call with me. There's a link below in the description of this video. And if you found this video helpful, it would be great if you would subscribe. And I'm curious to know, what is the biggest mistake that you've seen buyers make in Toronto, or maybe the biggest mistake that you made when you were buying or looking to buy? I would love to hear it if you'd be willing to share it in the comments. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.